There is a silence that is louder than any scream. It is the silence of a phone that no longer rings, a holiday table with an empty chair, and a lineage severed by a single jagged decision. You are told from the moment you take your first breath that blood is thicker than water. You are indoctrinated with the archaic commandment to honor your father and your mother, lest you be cast out into the wilderness. Civilization itself is built on the bedrock of the family unit. To reject it is not just an act of rebellion. It is, in the eyes of the collective, an act of heresy. But what happens when the hand that rocks the cradle is also the hand that strangles the spirit? What happens when the biological bond becomes a necrophilic pact, a contract that demands the death of your soul in exchange for the illusion of belonging? To cut off one's family is perhaps the most unnatural act a human being can commit. It goes against millions of years of evolutionary programming that screams at us that safety lies in the tribe and that exile is a death sentence. And yet, for a growing number of people, this self-imposed exile is the only path to sanity. It is a descent into the underworld, a voluntary orphaning that forces you to confront the deepest terrors of the psyche. This is not a decision born of malice, though it is often painted that way. It is a desperate surgical amputation of a limb that has become gangrenous. We are going to explore the anatomy of this estrangement. We will look beyond the petty arguments and the surface-level toxicity into the dark architecture of the family soul. We will examine the Jungian shadow that haunts the ancestral line, the Nietzschean struggle to overcome the herd morality of the household, and the terrifying, liberating reality of becoming an orphan by choice. This is the psychology of the severed tie. The family is not merely a group of individuals sharing DNA. It is a psychic entity. Carl Jung spoke of the collective unconscious, but there is also a familial unconscious. This is a reservoir of unspoken rules, buried traumas, and unlived lives that are passed down like heirlooms. In a healthy family, this reservoir is a wellspring of support. In a dysfunctional system, it is a swamp. Every family system demands homeostasis. It seeks balance, even if that balance is pathological. To maintain this equilibrium, roles are assigned before you are even born. There is the golden child, who carries the parent's unfulfilled ambitions. There is the caretaker, who absorbs the parent's emotional instability. And then there is you, the scapegoat, the black sheep, the truth teller. If you are the one who walked away, it is likely because you were the vessel for the family's shadow. The shadow, in Jungian psychology, consists of everything the conscious personality rejects: aggression, sexuality, weakness, envy. Families have shadows too. The perfect suburban family that attends church every Sunday may have a shadow of profound rage and addiction, but the family ego cannot acknowledge this. It needs a dumping ground. It needs someone to project all its rejected filth onto, so that the rest of the system can remain pure. You became that vessel. When you acted out, you weren't just being difficult, you were acting out the repressed tension of the entire house. When you pointed out the hypocrisy, you weren't just being rebellious, you were shattering the collective delusion. The family labeled you the problem, not because you were broken, but because you were the only one reacting to the poison in the air. Cutting them off often begins here, in the realization that you can no longer afford to be the trash can for your lineage's dysfunction. The process of leaving is rarely sudden. It is a slow death by 1,000 cuts. It usually begins with the realization of the narcissistic parent or the devouring mother. Jung described the negative aspect of the mother archetype as the one who refuses to let the child grow, who swallows them back into the womb of unconsciousness. This is the parent who views the child not as a separate entity, but as an extension of themselves. In these dynamics, love is not a gift. It is a transaction. It is conditional. I will love you if you reflect me. I will love you if you remain small. I will love you if you never leave. This is the psychological equivalent of foot binding. They cripple your capacity for independence so that you can never walk away. When you finally initiate the cutoff, you are breaking a sacred covenant. This is why the guilt is so crushing. It is not just the guilt of hurting someone. It is the guilt of breaking a biological law. You are fighting against the herd instinct described by Nietzsche. The family is the primary herd. It enforces a slave morality, a morality of obedience, humility, and self-sacrifice. The herd demands that you lower yourself to the average, that you do not rise above the station of your fathers. To leave is to enact the will to power. It is to assert that your individual becoming is more important than the collective stagnation. Nietzsche warned that the individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, you will be lonely often, and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. The moment of estrangement is a psychological death. You are killing the parent inside your own head. Freud spoke of the need to kill the father metaphorically to achieve manhood. This means dismantling the internalized authority figure that governs your superego. For those who physically cut ties, this internal killing is brutal because it is mirrored by an external absence. You are not just killing their authority, you are grieving the parents you never had. This is the ambiguous loss. Unlike a death where there is a body and a funeral, estrangement is a loss without closure. They are still alive. They are out there breathing, perhaps posting photos of a happy life on social media, perhaps smearing your name to relatives. You are mourning the potential, the hope that one day they would wake up and see you. Cutting them off is the final admission that this hope is dead. It is the acceptance of a devastating reality. They are incapable of being who you need them to be. But let us go deeper into the mechanism of the cutoff itself. Why does it happen? It is rarely over a single argument. It is a reaction to the violation of the self. In the dysfunctional family, the self, your true authentic core, is under siege. The family demands the maintenance of a persona, a mask that fits their narrative. You must be the grateful son, the dutiful daughter, the silent observer. Over years, this creates a state of cognitive dissonance. You know the reality of the abuse, the neglect, the manipulation, but the family narrative insists on a reality of love and normalcy. This gaslighting fractures the psyche. Cutting ties is an act of integration. It is the moment where the pain of staying fragmented becomes greater than the pain of being alone. You choose the integrity of your own mind over the comfort of shared delusion. It is a desperate gasp for air. However, the aftermath is a landscape of ghosts. When you sever the tie, you do not just lose the toxic individuals, you often lose the entire network. Aunts, uncles, cousins, the flying monkeys, to use a term from narcissistic abuse recovery. These are the enablers who are dispatched to guilt-trip you back into the fold. But she's your mother, they say. He's getting old, they whisper. They do not understand that they are asking you to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. They are agents of the system's homeostasis, trying to pull the rogue planet back into orbit. Resisting them requires a hardness of heart that feels unnatural. You must become cold to survive. You must erect a fortress around your empathy, because your empathy is exactly what they used to enslave you. This leads us to the archetype of the orphan. In stories and myths, the hero is almost always an orphan. Harry Potter, Luke Skywalker, Frodo Baggins, they must be separated from the biological parents to begin the hero's journey. Why? Because the parents represent the known, the safety of the past, the womb. To grow, one must enter the unknown. By cutting off your family, you are self-orphaning. You are casting yourself into the wilderness. This is terrifying, but it is also the prerequisite for true individuation. Jung defined individuation as the process of becoming the person you are inherently meant to be. This cannot happen if you are constantly managing the emotions of a parent who refuses to grow up. When you are alone, stripped of the familial identity, you are forced to ask, who am I? Not who I was told to be, not who I had to be to survive dinner time, but who am I? This void is where the true work begins. But be warned, the shadow of the family follows you. You carry them in your blood. You may find their voices in your head when you criticize yourself. You may find their rage in your chest when you are under stress. This is the danger of the repetition compulsion. Freud noted that we are doomed to repeat what we cannot remember or process. Many people who cut off their families find themselves marrying people who feel eerily familiar. They find a partner who is just as critical as their father, or just as smothering as their mother. The psyche seeks to recreate the original trauma in a desperate attempt to master it. The cutoff is not the end of the work. It is only the beginning. Physical distance is easy. Psychological distance is the war. To truly be free, you must face the internalized parent. You must identify which thoughts are yours and which are merely echoes of the people you left behind. This requires a ruthless inventory of your own soul. Are you still acting out of rebellion? If you live your life solely to prove them wrong, you are still controlled by them. The opposite of love is not hate, it is indifference. Freedom is when their opinion no longer holds the weight of a God's decree, but is merely the opinion of a flawed, damaged human being. Let's talk about the specific pathology of the parent who drives a child away. Often we are dealing with transgenerational trauma. Your parents were likely victims of their own parents. The abuse flows down the river of time like a dark silt. They did not have the consciousness or the courage to build a dam, so the water flooded you. By cutting them off, you are building that dam. You are the cycle breaker. This is a term thrown around lightly, but the reality is grueling. To break a cycle that has persisted for generations requires absorbing an immense amount of pain without passing it on. It means you stop the line of abuse with your own body. You say, "It ends with me." This heroic act is often met with complete incomprehension by society. Society worships the image of the family. Look at our holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas. They are shrines to the family unit. For the estranged, these days are minefields of loneliness and triggers. You walk through a world that constantly tells you that you are incomplete without your kin. You must learn to mother and father yourself. This is the concept of re-parenting. It involves treating yourself with the compassion, protection, and interest that you were denied. It means validating your own reality when the world gaslights you. It means building a logical family or a family of choice to replace the biological one. But there is a darker truth we must confront. Sometimes the estrangement is not about abuse in the conventional sense. Sometimes it is about a fundamental mismatch of souls. There are families where the values are so diametrically opposed to the nature of the child that coexistence destroys the child's potential. Nietzsche spoke of the higher man who must separate himself from the masses. If your family is firmly rooted in mediocrity, in bigotry, in a fearful, small-minded view of existence, and you are driven by a hunger for truth, art, or expansion, you will suffocate. They will try to pull you down, not out of malice, but out of the gravity of their own smallness. They act like crabs in a bucket. If one tries to climb out, the others pull him back. In this case, the cutoff is an act of evolutionary necessity. You are preserving the spark of potential that the universe has placed in you. It feels arrogant to say this, to think you are better or beyond your family. But this false humility is just another trap of the slave morality. If you have wings and you are born into a family of moles who live underground, you are not wrong for wanting the sky, and they are not wrong for loving the dirt. But you cannot live together. The loneliness you feel is the price of admission to a life of your own design. It is a sacred loneliness. Jung said, "I am solitary because I know things and must hint at things which others do not know, and usually do not even want to know." The estranged child knows the dark secret of the family, that love was a lie, or at best a bargaining chip. Holding that secret makes you lonely, but it also makes you real. As you navigate this path, you will encounter the hoovering attempts, the sudden messages on birthdays, the medical emergencies that may or may not be real. These are tests. They test your resolve. They test whether you have truly dissolved the trauma bond. The trauma bond is an addiction to the cycle of abuse. It is biological, rooted in the peptide addiction in the brain. When you leave, you go through withdrawal. You crave the chaos because chaos is the only home you've ever known. Peace feels boring. Peace feels suspicious. You have to rewire your nervous system to accept safety. You have to teach your body that it is okay to let your guard down, now that the predator is no longer in the room. But the predator was in the room for 20 years, so the vigilance remains. This is CPTSD, complex post-traumatic stress disorder. It is the legacy of living in a war zone where the generals were your parents. Healing from this requires a philosophical shift. You must move from the victim mentality, "Look what they did to me," to the survivor mentality, and finally to the creator mentality, "Look what I built from the ashes." You must also confront the concept of forgiveness. Society tells you to forgive and forget. This is dangerous advice. Premature forgiveness is a bypass. It is a way to avoid the rage that is necessary for separation. You are allowed to be angry. Anger is the fire that burns away the cords of attachment. Forgiveness, if it comes at all, comes much later, and it does not mean reconciliation. It means you no longer wish them suffering. You understand them as tragic figures, caught in their own loops of misery, acting out scripts they did not write. You can look at them with a distant pity, like watching a tragedy on a stage, but you do not climb onto the stage to save them. You realize you cannot save them. You can only save yourself. There is a powerful concept in alchemy called the separation. It is the separation of the elements to purify them. You have undergone a separation. You have separated your essence from the murky solution of your lineage. Now comes the conjuncture, the bringing together of your fragmented parts into a new whole. This new whole is stronger because it is self-forged. The bond you have with yourself is the only one that is guaranteed to last until the grave. By cutting off the external sources of validation and safety, you have forced yourself to find them within. You have become your own sanctuary. Do not let the world shame you for your scars. The scar is the place where the structure became stronger. The empty chair at the holiday table is not a symbol of failure. It is a monument to your courage. It signifies that you refuse to accept less than you deserved. You refuse to drink poison just because it was served in a crystal glass by your mother. You have broken the timeline. You have stopped the ghost from haunting the next generation. If you have children, they will never know the specific terror you grew up with. That is your legacy. Not the preservation of a dysfunctional family name, but the preservation of the human spirit against the forces that sought to crush it. In the end, we all return to the void. We all face the great silence, but there is a difference between the silence of emptiness and the silence of peace. The estranged child fights a war to reach that peace. If you are standing in the wreckage of your family life, looking at the bridge you just burned, do not turn back. The fire lighting up the sky is guiding your way forward. You are not lost. You are just finally, for the first time, completely free. Walk into the dark. The only way out is through.